The Cyclist, by Erik Røde, 1755. Read by Sally Ronstadt. Continued.
Chapter 8. Limbo. Scene 38. A heart enshrouded in resentment. Carlo, who had witnessed the cataclysmic collision from a distance, rushed to the scene, his heart pounding with dread. He knelt beside Tomas, his weathered hands trembling as they reached out to check for signs of life. But deep down, he knew. Tomas's journey, filled with dreams of triumph and the resounding cheers of spectators, had come to an abrupt and devastating end on this sunlit day. As the village gathered around the heart-wrenching tableau of loss, Carlo's grief, bitter and profound, morphed into a deep-seated resentment towards Americans. His mind, clouded by anguish, irrationally associated their arrogance and wealth with the tragedies that had now twice befallen him and his loved ones. Amidst the sorrowful murmurs of the villagers, Carlo's voice rang out, laden with anguish and anger. This should never have happened. Not again, he muttered under his breath, his eyes locked onto the American tourist who stood by, the pallor of shock on his face. Carlo's once proud cycling attire now felt like a shroud of mourning, a symbol of his own helplessness in the face of tragedy. The American tourist, still in a state of shock, stammered, "I didn't see him. I swear, I didn't see him coming." Carlo's response was a mixture of grief and bitterness. "It's always the same, isn't it? Always the same story." The villagers, too, cast wary glances towards the outsider in their midst, their expressions a reflection of the collective sorrow and resentment that had taken root in their hearts. The memory of his aversion towards Americans, rooted in the stolen bicycle incident, now intertwined with the fresh wound of Tomas's loss. Carlo couldn't help but connect the two events, viewing them as reflections of the same disheartening reality. The once proud cyclist now carried a heavy heart, burdened not only by his grief but also by his increasingly negative sentiments towards a people he deemed responsible for his pain. The villagers, too, cast wary glances towards the outsider in their midst, their expressions a reflection of the collective sorrow and resentment that had taken root in their hearts. Scene 39. The bleak times. Amidst the bleak backdrop of the Great Depression, the physical and emotional toll on the villagers and Carlo himself was palpable. The once prosperous town now wore a shroud of austerity, and its people carried the weight of hardship in their gaunt faces and stooped shoulders. One frigid winter's evening, as the village gathered around a meager fire, the lines etched on their faces deeper than ever, Nonna Maria, the village's venerable matriarch, spoke words that seemed to cut through the biting cold. Her voice, though trembling with age, resonated with unwavering resolve. "Carlo," she began, addressing the weathered cyclist, "these are trying times. But remember, hardship reveals the true character of a person and a community. We've weathered storms before, and we shall endure this one." Carlo, who had seen more than his fair share of adversity, nodded in agreement. He knew that their shared history had forged bonds as unbreakable as steel. "Nonna Maria, you speak the truth. We are a family, bound by our love for this village. We'll face these challenges together." The physicality of their struggles was evident in the daily routines that now defined their lives. Men who had once worked the fields from dawn to dusk now trudged to labor with worry etched on their faces. Women, their hands worn from years of tending to hearth and home, managed meager meals with unwavering determination. As food grew scarcer and necessities harder to come by, the villagers became resourceful, sharing what little they had with one another. The marketplace, once a bustling hub of commerce, now saw humble barterings and exchanges of goods. It was in these exchanges that the spirit of the village shone brightest, a demonstration to their enduring unity in the face of adversity. Yet, the weight of their circumstances took its toll on Carlo. The bitterness he harbored towards Americans, stemming from the tragedies of the past, festered like an unhealed wound. He couldn't help but connect their present suffering to his negative sentiments towards outsiders. One evening, as an American traveler ventured into the village, the villagers exchanged wary glances. An elderly man, who had seen Carlo's transformation over the years, warned his fellow villagers in hushed tones, "Be cautious. Remember Carlo's bicycle." The cautionary tales of the stolen bicycle and the collision that had taken Tomas echoed in their collective memory, shaping their interactions with foreigners. These were indeed bleak times, both physically and emotionally, as the village grappled with the stark realities of the Great Depression. Yet, in their shared struggle, the bonds of community grew stronger, reminding them that even in the darkest of hours, the human spirit had the capacity to endure and find solace in one another. Scene 40. A time of reflection. Amid the somber backdrop of hardship, Carlo often sought refuge in the comforting embrace of the fire's glow. Although he was merely in his mid-20s, he felt ancient. His fingers, aged and weathered, told the tale of a man who had weathered storms beyond his years. They traced the contours of his past like a master painter recalling strokes of a long-forgotten masterpiece. Memories, distant yet vivid, danced in the depths of his eyes, taking him back to the days of his youth when the world was an open canvas, waiting for him to paint his story upon it. The wind had been his ally, whispering secrets of the road and the boundless adventures that lay beyond each bend. It had carried the scent of blooming flowers in spring, the warmth of summer's embrace, and the crispness of autumn's arrival. In his youth, Carlo had been a vibrant soul, full of dreams and aspirations. The world had stretched out before him like uncharted territory, and he had embraced it with the fervor of youth. The roads had beckoned, promising discovery and adventure, and he had answered their call with unbridled enthusiasm. But as he sat by the fire's flickering light, his gaze locked on the dance of the flames, he couldn't help but feel as though a lifetime had passed since those carefree days. The weight of experiences, both joyous and sorrowful, had etched themselves onto his face, transforming him into a man who carried the burdens of the world on his shoulders. Carlo's eyes held the wisdom of someone who had navigated life's twists and turns, who had faced challenges and triumphs, and who had emerged on the other side with a deeper understanding of the human condition. The years had been unkind to his body, but they had forged his spirit into something unbreakable. As the fire crackled and popped, casting dancing shadows on the walls, Carlo's mind wandered through the labyrinth of his memories. He contemplated the winding paths that fate had woven through his life, each turn a marker of choices made and emotions felt. It was in these moments of reflection that he realized the profound impact of the stolen bicycle incident and how it had shaped not only his life but the destiny of the entire village. As Europe grappled with the crushing weight of the Great Depression, Carlo's introspection became a flickering beacon amidst the encroaching darkness. He began to understand that his feelings towards Americans weren't solely born from the tragedy that had befallen him but were also the product of a tapestry of experiences that had etched themselves deeply into his heart. Scene 41. Cupid. One chilly evening, as Carlo sat lost in the labyrinth of his thoughts, Ponti, the same young villager who had sought his help during times of illness and emergencies, approached him. Her eyes, twin lanterns of warmth and concern, met his. However, she was no longer a young girl but had transformed into a very sweet and attractive young woman. Carlo, she began gently, taking a seat beside him, I've watched you carry this burden for so long, this weight of resentment towards Americans. But aren't we all more than the sum of our past sorrows? Carlo turned to look at her, his face illuminated by the fire's flickering dance. Ponti, these feelings have been my companions for years. It's not easy to let go. Ponti's voice was soft but unwavering. Yes, the past shapes us, but it shouldn't define our future. Maybe it's time to consider that not all Americans are the same, just as not all villagers are the same. Carlo sighed, his gaze returning to the mesmerizing flames. Ponti's words lingered in the air like a gentle melody, and he couldn't help but feel a growing connection with her, a sense of understanding that transcended the boundaries of his bitterness. In a sudden, profound moment, Carlo felt his heart swell with emotions for Ponti. It was a realization that had been quietly growing within him, a revelation that defied the shadows of his past. Not too long after, they sealed their love in marriage, a union that held the promise of a brighter future. The budding romance between Carlo and Ponti was like a delicate flower unfurling amidst the harsh winds of their time. Carlo, once a man burdened by resentment and grief, found solace and renewal in Ponti's presence. Their love story was marked by subtle gestures and stolen glances, each moment an indication to the healing power of companionship. One crisp autumn evening, as the leaves painted the village in shades of red and gold, Carlo decided it was time to lay bare the feelings that had been growing within him. They stood by the river, the place where their conversations had often wandered into the realms of dreams and hopes. Carlo cleared his throat, his heart pounding like the rhythmic beat of a drum. "Ponti," he began, his voice a mixture of vulnerability and determination, "I want you to know that you've brought light into my life during its darkest hours. Your presence has been a balm for my wounded soul." Ponti's eyes, like twin pools of understanding, met Carlo's gaze. "Carlo, I've seen a change in you, a shift towards healing and forgiveness. You've inspired me to believe in the power of love and redemption." Their hands found each other in the cool breeze, fingers intertwining like the intricate threads of fate. It was a moment of unspoken understanding, a silent agreement that their hearts had found their way to each other. Scene 42. The wedding. Their wedding day was a celebration that rippled through the entire village. It was a testimony to love's ability to bloom even in the harshest of times. The sun smiled down upon the cobblestone streets as friends and family gathered, their faces filled with joy as Carlo and Ponti exchanged vows. Amidst the cheerful chatter of guests and the scent of blooming flowers, Carlo and Ponti's love radiated like a beacon. They stood before the village priest, hands clasped, hearts intertwined, and promised to support each other through life's trials and triumphs. The birth of their first child, a son, was a momentous occasion that filled their home with newfound happiness. It was a sunny morning when Angelo came into the world, his cries echoing like the sweetest of melodies. Carlo's eyes glistened with tears of joy as he held his son for the first time, feeling an overwhelming sense of pride and love. Ponti smiled, her own eyes filled with affection as she whispered to Carlo, "He's our miracle, a symbol of our love and the future we've built together." Carlo nodded, unable to tear his gaze away from their precious son. "Angelo," he murmured, "a name that carries the weight of our history and the promise of a brighter tomorrow." Their love story, born from the ashes of tragedy, had blossomed into a tapestry of hope, forgiveness, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. In the embrace of their family and the warmth of their love, Carlo and Ponti found solace and redemption, proving that even in the darkest of times, love could be a guiding light. Ponti and Carlo were blessed with a child, a beautiful boy who brought immeasurable joy into their lives. They named him Angelo, a poignant tribute to Carlo's beloved grandfather, the man whose legacy continued to shape their family's story. Amidst the hardships of the Great Depression, in the warmth of their home and the light of their love, Carlo found the strength to confront his inner demons and reconsider his deep-seated aversion towards Americans. It was the dawn of a new chapter, a time of healing, and the beginning of a profound transformation that would redefine his perspective on life and the world beyond.
The Cyclist, by Erik Røde, 1755. Read by Sally Ronstadt.